November 1945. Harbin, China. The black truck arrives at midnight. No windows, 20 prisoners inside. They don't know where they're going. They'll never leave. The vehicle descends into a tunnel beneath the compound. White coats wait in fluorescent light. One by one, prisoners receive 3-digit numbers. Their names disappear. Blood samples taken. Only the healthy are kept. The sick are useless for what comes next. This is Unit 731. Between 1936 and 1945, at least 3,000 people were experimented on at this facility alone. Total deaths reach hundreds of thousands. But the true horror isn't the scale. It's what happened afterward. How the architects escaped justice, protected by a deal that corrupted post-war ethics. Surgeon General Shiro Ishii was born in 1892 to a wealthy Japanese family. Arrogant, brash, brilliant. He toured American and European research facilities in the early 1930s and returned convinced biological weapons could win wars. He just needed human subjects. Manchuria provided the laboratory. Japan invaded in 1931. In 1936, Emperor Hirohito authorized Ishii's research unit. What began as the Epidemic Prevention Department became something darker. The Pingfang facility near Harbin grew massive, 150 buildings, capacity for 600 prisoners, 3,000 personnel. Branches spread across China, Unit 1855 in Beijing, Unit 1644 in Nanjing. At its peak, Ishii's network controlled over 10,000 personnel. Official mission: prevent epidemics. Actual mission: perfect biological warfare through human experimentation. Prisoners were called marutas, logs. The term came from the facility's lumber mill cover story, but the language served a purpose. Call a human a log, and cutting becomes carpentry. Who were these logs? Political prisoners, captured partisans, homeless people, mentally disabled, infants, pregnant women, mostly Chinese, but also Russians, Mongolians, Koreans. Reports suggest small numbers of Allied POWs. 600 new prisoners arrived yearly, provided by military police, rounded up for suspicious activities. Once processed, names became numbers. The experiments began immediately. Researchers infected prisoners with plague, cholera, typhus, tuberculosis, syphilis, then withheld treatment to observe disease progression. Some were dissected alive to study infected organs in their natural state. Limbs removed and reattached to opposite sides. Stomachs surgically eliminated. Esophaguses connected directly to intestines. Brain, lung, liver sections extracted from living subjects. No anesthesia. The screaming was irrelevant to research. One former member described his first vivisection to the New York Times. The victim had been infected with plague, cut open while conscious. The assistant watched his lungs work, watched his heartbeat. Documented everything. Yoshimura Hisato specialized in hypothermia. He submerged prisoners' limbs in ice water until they froze solid. Witnesses said frozen limbs sounded like wood planks when struck. Then came thawing tests, hot water, open flame. No treatment overnight. Unit 731 proved optimal recovery was water slightly warmer than 100 degrees but never exceeding 122 degrees. The research saved Japanese soldiers from frostbite. It was purchased with mutilated prisoners who screamed as frozen flesh burned. Other experiments tested human limits. Subjects placed in pressure chambers simulating high altitude, X-ray exposure for sterilization studies, dehydration, starvation. Each data point was a destroyed human being. Pregnant women were infected with diseases, exposed to chemical weapons, subjected to bullet wounds, then opened to study fetal effects. To study syphilis transmission, infected male prisoners were forced to rape female and male prisoners. If the first exposure failed to establish infection, more rapes were arranged. Sexual violence became experimental protocol. Laboratory experiments were preliminary. Real objective: weaponization. Plague-infected fleas bred by millions. In October 1940, Japanese planes dropped them over Kuzhou. Another attack on Changde in 1941 triggered outbreaks lasting 4 years. Over 7,000 died in Changde alone. Wells poisoned with cholera and typhoid. Food contaminated with salmonella. Plague-infected animals released near war's end killed at least 30,000 in the Harbin area from 1946 through 1948. Estimates vary wildly. American historian Sheldon Harris states over 200,000 killed in germ warfare. A 2002 symposium estimated 580,000 deaths from germ warfare and experiments combined. The true number will never be known. Unit 731 destroyed most records before Allied forces arrived. August 1945. Japan's surrender imminent. Destroy everything. Kill remaining prisoners. No witnesses. The last logs are liquidated, bodies incinerated or buried in mass graves. Ishii and senior staff flee to Japan. They coordinate stories. If interrogated, they'll claim purely defensive research. All documents destroyed. The lies are rehearsed. But Ishii miscalculates. He assumes prosecution like Nazi doctors. He doesn't realize the Americans want something else. They want the data. General MacArthur arrived in Japan to oversee occupation. Priority: gather intelligence on biological warfare before Soviets could. The Japanese stonewalled. All records destroyed. Research purely defensive. General Ishii claimed biological warfare was inhumane. By January 1947, breakthrough. A Japanese intermediary offered a trade. The human experiments were extensive enough to reach scientific conclusions. Real data. Human data. They'd trade it for immunity. By 1948, the arrangement was formalized. MacArthur offered full immunity to high-ranking officials for their experimental data. Shiro Ishii among them. American investigators calculated the U.S. spent 250,000 yen investigating, while Ishii's research cost millions of dollars and years of work. They argued the U.S. got the data for a mere pittance. No mention of human cost. No mention of thousands murdered for this knowledge. Tokyo war crimes trials began in 1946. Japanese leaders prosecuted for atrocities. But Unit 731 was never mentioned. The U.S. blocked prosecution access to witnesses, classified incriminating documents, information deliberately withheld from the tribunal. In 1981, Judge Bert Roehling wrote, "It is a bitter experience to be informed now that centrally ordered Japanese war criminality of the most disgusting kind was kept secret from the court by the U.S." The Soviets held separate trials in 1949. 12 Kwantung Army members convicted, but Americans dismissed victim accounts as communist propaganda. After immunity, Ishii was hired by the U.S. to lecture at Fort Detrick on bioweapons. He traveled freely, lived openly, faced no consequences. Neither did his subordinates. Yoshimura Hisato became president of Kyoto Prefectural University. In 1978, Emperor Hirohito awarded him for environmental adaptation science. Monsters became professors. Torturers became honored researchers. Ishii died of throat cancer in 1959 at age 67. Converted to Catholicism on his deathbed. Never faced trial. Never apologized. Never acknowledged the thousands he murdered. For decades, Japan refused acknowledgement. Government didn't admit wrongdoing until 1988. No apology even then. In 1982, China established a museum at the former site. Replicas of surgical suites, crosses representing bombing victims, frozen statues screaming. A digital display shows the death toll increasing every second. In Japan, memory remains contested. Shrines honor war heroes, including Unit 731 personnel. History textbooks minimize or omit atrocities. In 2002, Tokyo District Court acknowledged Japan's inhumane biological warfare, but stopped short of compensation or formal apology. In August 2024, Hideo Shimizu, a 95-year-old former Unit 731 member, returned to China to offer repentance. He was 16 when assigned. He remembered a room filled with human organs in glass jars. Most shocking, a whole female body with fetus in its womb preserved in fluid. The U.S. immunity deal valued data over accountability. The U.S. prosecuted Nazi doctors and established the Nuremberg Code for medical ethics. But it granted immunity to Japanese doctors who committed equivalent atrocities. The reason? Geopolitics. The Cold War was beginning. The Soviets couldn't acquire biological warfare knowledge. National security trumped justice. Fort Detrick became the repository for Unit 731's knowledge. Knowledge obtained through mass murder was integrated into American military research. Victims never acknowledged. 11. November 1945. Harbin, China. The black truck has departed. The tunnel is empty. Prisoners gone, processed, numbered, experimented upon, killed, cremated. Buildings demolished, documents burned, mass graves concealed. Within months, physical evidence largely disappeared. But photographs survive. Witness testimonies emerge over decades. New documents surface, confessions from gulags, research notes hidden in families' storage. Though hundreds of thousands died, not because of cruelty, though suffering defies comprehension. It was worst because it succeeded. Perpetrators escaped justice, knowledge absorbed into superpower programs. Crimes covered up, denied, minimized. Victims disappeared into unmarked graves. That black truck still drives through history, still delivers prisoners to unmarked facilities, still reminds us. Dehumanization requires only a rationale powerful enough to override conscience and institutions willing to look away. But the question echoes from Harbin to Fort Detrick to every laboratory where ethics and expedience collide. When knowledge is purchased with mass murder, can it ever be clean? The organs in those glass jars provide no answer. They only stare back, 3,000 silent witnesses to what humans will do when convinced the cost is worth paying, as long as someone else is destroyed to pay it.